So let's just dive right in with a simple but kind of uncomfortable question. Are you in complete control of your decisions? I mean, you probably like to think you are, right? We all do. We love to believe we're these highly rational creatures just carefully calculating every single move. But the actual truth? Our brilliant, amazing brains are playing invisible tricks on us every single day. And honestly, they do it so seamlessly, we don't even notice it's happening. Welcome to this explainer. Today, our mission is to basically decode these hidden mental shortcuts that quite literally warp our everyday reality. We're going to explore 10 specific psychological tricks your brain pulls on you, and way more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to beat them. Here's our roadmap for today. First up, your brain's hidden shortcuts. Second, tricks of memory and estimation. Third, the illusions of choice. And finally, how to beat the bias. Okay, section 1, your brain's hidden shortcuts, the invisible mechanics of the mind. Now, our minds are incredibly powerful, for sure, but processing every single tiny piece of information around us, that takes a massive amount of energy. Having a truly comprehensive memory of literally every detail in our lives would actually be completely debilitating. So to survive, the brain uses these brilliant little energy-saving devices called heuristics. You can think of them as mental shortcuts or, rules of thumb that just allow us to make super quick decisions without totally overheating our mental engines. And this perfectly illustrates a really famous concept developed by the psychologist Daniel Kahneman. Basically, our brain operates on two distinct tracks. You got System 1, which is automatic, intuitive, and highly instinctual. It's incredibly fast. Then you have System 2, which is our self-aware, reflective, analytical system. That one is slow and deliberate. So the tricks and errors we're about to talk about, they pop up when System 1 just grabs the wheel and makes a snap judgment all before System 2 even gets a chance to pull the emergency brake and check the facts. Moving on to Section 2, tricks of memory and estimation, how we warp our reality. Let's start with the availability heuristic. This is basically our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of something happening simply because it's easily available in our memory. It is exactly why people are terrified of shark attacks, but don't think twice about car crashes. The unusual, highly emotional events just pop into our heads so much faster than, well, the boring everyday statistics. So the absolute crucial point here is that we judge reality not by actual facts, but by whatever easily and quickly comes to mind. Which brings us to the very famous Dunning-Kruger effect. This is such a fascinating irony of human competence. It basically states that unskilled individuals will vastly overestimate their own abilities, while true experts actually tend to underestimate theirs. Just think about that for a second. A lack of skill literally hides your incompetence from your own self-perspective. It makes you feel way more confident than you really should be. Meanwhile, the actual experts just kind of assume everyone else finds the task exactly as easy as they do. Then there's the anchoring bias. This happens when you rely far, far too heavily on the very first piece of information you receive. Like the sticker price on a new car. That initial number sets this almost unbreakable, invisible baseline in your head. From that moment on, all your following decisions, all your estimates, they're really just adjustments made from that original anchor. And the crazy part? This happens even if that anchor was completely arbitrary to begin with. Now, consider the time-saving bias. This perfectly shows how our logic just completely fails us when we're dealing with speed. We routinely underestimate how much time we save when we speed up from a really low speed, but we vastly overestimate the time we save when we speed up from an already high speed. So when you're driving fast on the highway and you decide to push the pedal even harder to, save time, mathematically, you are barely saving any time at all, but your brain totally convinces you it's this huge, massive gain. To wrap up this section, let's look at the first conclusion bias. The legendary investor Charlie Munger actually famously noted that the mind works a bit like a sperm and an egg. The very first idea gets in, and then the mind just shuts. Since evaluating endless options is completely exhausting for us, this energy-saving device basically stops us from asking any further questions once we settle on an initial, plausible-sounding answer. All right, Section 3. The illusions of choice. Why you choose what you choose. Let's take a look at hyperbolic discounting. There was this amazing study where people were asked to make a food choice for the coming week, and 74% chose healthy fruit. But when they were asked to choose for right this exact moment, 70% chose chocolate. So hyperbolic discounting basically means we have this absolutely overwhelming preference for immediate payoffs. We regularly make choices today that our future selves would really prefer we hadn't made. We're basically sabotaging our future health or our future wealth just for a quick fix right now. This leads us directly to two invisible forces that are, quite honestly, used by marketers all the time: the default effect and the framing effect. The default effect is our super strong tendency to just favor the preset option. I mean, if a box is already checked online, we rarely uncheck it, right? Then there's the framing effect. This is when we draw completely different conclusions from the exact same piece of information purely based on how it's presented. Like, imagine a doctor describing a surgery as having a 90% survival rate versus a 10% mortality rate. The underlying data is literally identical, but your emotional reaction and your choice will be heavily, heavily dictated by that framing. You know, our choices are also highly relative, all thanks to the decoy effect. Picture this. You're choosing between a small coffee for $3 and a large for $6. You might think, the large is a bit too pricey. But if that same coffee shop introduces a medium decoy option for $5.50, suddenly that $6 large looks like an absolutely fantastic deal. It's wild. A completely inferior third option can literally magically push us toward a specific, much more expensive choice, and we don't even realize it's happening. Finally, rounding out our top 10, we have the hindsight bias. The second an event happens, our deep-seated narrative instinct just takes over, and we immediately convince ourselves that, yep, we knew it all along. It's actually almost impossible to truly turn back the clock mentally. And because of that, it makes us constantly judge our past decisions using information we definitely 100% did not have at the time the event actually occurred. Okay, Section 4, How to Beat the Bias. Overriding the system. I know, going through all these tricks, it is so easy to feel like our brains are just, well, completely broken. But don't worry. The ultimate weapon against all this cognitive bias is actually building yourself a toolkit of mental models. So what is a mental model? It's really just a simplified explanation of how something works. They act like a map for your brain, highlighting the key information and totally ignoring the irrelevant details, so you can compress all that complexity. Listen, to be a great thinker, you don't need to know absolutely everything. You just need to take the best big ideas from multiple disciplines, stuff like physics, biology, microeconomics, and use them as a practical map to make highly intelligent decisions. So here is your 3-step override protocol. Step 1, simply acknowledge the limits of your own expertise. That's how you fight the Dunning-Kruger effect head-on. Step 2, manage your stress. Honestly, this one is absolutely critical because stress triggers a literal, physiological fight or flight response. That forces you to rely purely on basic instinct, which amplifies every single bias we've just discussed. And step 3, actively apply a mental model to purposefully engage your slow, rational System 2 brain. Let's put this all together into a really practical toolkit you can use right now. For estimation errors like that anchoring bias, you've got to explicitly acknowledge your limits. For choice errors like hyperbolic discounting, just pause for a second and apply a mental model. And for those tricky memory errors like hindsight bias, try keeping an actual decision journal. That way, you have a completely unaltered written record of what you actually knew at the time you made the choice. At the end of the day, our minds are phenomenal processing machines, but we have to remember they were designed for efficiency, not necessarily for perfect accuracy. By understanding these invisible shortcuts, you can actually take the power back from your automatic System 1. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to carry with you today. I want you to look really closely at your actions this evening and just ask yourself, which of these 10 psychological tricks did your brain fall for today?